Okay folks, back to work on a little drag car here. Someone had talked about the bump steer, and I wanted to explain to everybody what bump steer is. Bump steer is when, if you're going down the track and you hit a bump, or even on the road, on the highway, anything to move your suspension up and down, it's going to change the angle of this steering rod coming from your rack and pinion or coming wherever it's coming from, depending on what kind of suspension you got set up. So as it bounces, it's actually going to steer somewhat itself, because it's changing. This is mounted solid, this is changing up and down, so it's actually changing the length of your arm. So that's something that we've got to work with when we get this done. And with the height of the arms coming off of the spindles, we can change this rack, we can raise the rack, we can lower the rack, we can do some changing on it to get it to where I'm happy with it. And you're going to have some bump steer, there's nothing you can do about that. But what I want to do is once I get the engine in it, get all the, get the total weight, then we'll actually do the toe in toe out on the front end, and hopefully we can work with what we've got without it changing a lot when you're hitting bumps and stuff. We're going to get on this right here. I've got got it partially cleaned up here. One of our aluminum rotors or spindles, and Alcoa, and of course left hand side. So that tells me that the Corvette had out front steering, which is good. So we're going together just like we're supposed to. I want to be able to do some measurements and get the travel on this side while I'm working on the other side. So that'll give me my ideas in my head for what I want to do and how I want to do it. So okay, let me show you what I'm going to do next here. Okay, what we got here, this is how the old lower ball joint come out. Now the pivot was out here, so what we've basically got to do is, this is sort of a square and this is a round, so we got to put a round peg in a square hole, if that makes any sense. I love the rubber boot already busted. That's straight out of the box. Anyway, my luck. It's probably something somebody returned to CarQuest, and that's what we ended up with, but that's why Rock Auto had it. Alright, what we're going to do, we got two ways of doing this. Okay, first we're going to have a hole to press this into. Now this don't have the knurls on it like I've seen a lot of them, but what we want is about a 2/1000 press. Two different ways we can do it. We can turn a piece on the lathe, or we can bore a piece on the mill. Now, depending on if I want to weld the piece entirely in, or round bushing, we can do it on the lathe. But what we're going to run into, the more heat we get around that bushing, the more it's going to obscure it, let's just say, and it's not going to want to press in right. I would probably have to hone it before I pressed it in. So the other way we could do it would be to make a plate that we want that will actually fit on the bottom of this, because this strap's going to have to go. We'll probably just weld a temporary piece across here, cut this strap out, get these good and flat, and then I'm going to make a plate that actually lays on the bottom of this and maybe protrudes up a little ways, so I can have some really good weld on it, and have our hole out here in it, and I can bore that with the boring bar. And if I do that, that's going to keep a lot of the heat away from it. I still may need to make a plug that is exact fit instead of being the 2/1000 press, and slide it down in and leave it in there while I weld it, and then knock it back out, and that'll help keep it from distorting too much. But what I'm going to do now is go ahead and clean this up really good. I'm going to get a piece between it and weld it in to where these will stay where they're at. Then I'll get this out of the way, and then we're going to take a piece of paper, we're going to design our piece that we want. And now, so you can see, let me find my other spindle here. I'm going to show you how far that was sticking out. Okay, to show you how far the pivot point was out, the pivot from the bolt hole, I'll get a good measurement on that, and that'll give me a good idea to where I need to machine my hole, because I'm going to go ahead and try to put it back where it was on this outside. Now, because the spindle length from the center of our pivot to our faceplate is farther, it's going to stick our wheels out. Now, bad news on our wheels. These weld wheels, it's Ford bolt pattern, and James, my buddy, picked them up from a guy saying they were, he said they were Chevrolet, and they look like Chevrolet because they're, you know, they take the big lug nuts instead of the tapered lug nuts, so we really couldn't tell, but I tried them and they're not. So I'm going to go back to plan A. That was plan B. Plan A was to run mini spare rims, and believe it or not, the mini spare rims are inset pretty good, so that's actually going to help us on this. And because, you know, it's going to bring everything out, and I'm trying to keep it in. Now we're raising the body 2 inches, so it's going to help on the clearance, but I want to try to keep everything tucked in as far as I can. So we'll run the mini spare wheels, they're solids, and then we'll run the 125R 15 tires. So, and you know, like I said, this is a cheap project. This is not, we're not building this, you know, as a high dollar race car. We're just trying to get something together here that's safe and pretty fast and not going to break. So we'll get started on this and we'll go from there. Okay, we've got this piece off that was looped on the bottom. We've got this welded in just as a temporary brace, and we've got our piece designed that we want to use. And what I'm going to do, once I get the whole board, I'm going to do that first on the metal, and then I will go and figure out how far the radius needs to be around it to give us enough strength. But basically what will happen is this will get welded on, and then these ends will be actually redone for clearance to be able to get the ball joint up in, and that's what we're going to end up with. Now this is going to be 1/2 inch plate. The surface area for the press fit on the ball joint is 1/2 inch, so that'll work out perfect, and so that's what we're going to work on now, and I will show you more. Okay folks, I'm going to go ahead and do this in 5/8 because I don't have enough half to do what I need to do. Can't find any anyways. Okay, we got our whole board ready to go there, so what we'll do now is mark it. I'll probably just plasma cut it and then go from there. I'm going to use the machine to do some measuring and marking with the digital readout, and then we can cut it and grind it up and hopefully have it done. Okay folks, we've got our piece cut out here. It's not perfect. I mean, I cut it out with the plasma and then just ground it a little bit. The hole is perfect, but that's what we're going to locate off of. This is going to get welded in anyway, so it'll work out fine. Like I said, that's 5/8. So we'll go ahead and leave it 5/8. I'm not going to take it down anywhere. Probably a little overboard. Well, I'm sure a little overboard. A little heavy, but it's okay. Not going to hurt anything. Okay, what we're going to do now, to get everything where we need it here, I'm going to come in here and slice this, and that piece is actually going to sit up inside. And we know that our pivot needs to be 1 inch from the center of these bolt holes. So I will set it up to where the pivot's 1 inch, and actually, because this is a 2 inch hole, it's plus 80 thousandths, so you just figure 1 and 40 thousandths would be to the edge of this. So basically this is where our bolt hole is going to be, straight across here. So we'll get it level and clamped in real good, and then we'll get her welded in. And like I said, when we're done with all this, we'll end up taking this back off, boxing it in. Actually, there's 1 or 2 Heralds that are on YouTube and on the internet that have V8s in them, and I happened to look at one last night. I've had a couple people send me pictures and stuff, but I seen one of the guys running with a small block Chevrolet and a supercharger, and you know, there's pictures of it with the front right wheel up in the air, and I happened to see some pictures under the under the hood, and he's running all stock. Nothing was boxed in or anything. So, but I know we're running a little bit heavier engine, so you know, do it halfway right the first time, and then we won't have to worry about it. So I'm not gonna say we're doing it right because I'm just a record driver. But all right, back at it. Drilling the shock bolt now, and just about done with the A-frame, all but boxing it. We're getting close. Okay, folks, I've got about all I could get done for one evening anyway. We've got the A-frame just stuck back on. I pulled it off and done a little machining on it and drilling. Well, I think you've seen me drilling the hole. And what I did is I machined flats on each side for the bolt. And I've still got to weld some more. Still got a box, which is not an issue. That's really not that time consuming. The Delrin for the new bushings will be in hopefully tomorrow or the next day. I just ordered a I think it was, well, about a foot long, 1.25 inch, solid round stock, and then I'll turn all my bushings out of that. And and as you can see, or as you should have seen, this 5/8 actually goes all the way up to here, so the entire area. And now the coil over is actually hooked into that 5/8 piece. So, you know, I don't see any issues with this going anywhere once we get it boxed and increase the bolt size on the bushings, or the A-frame bushings. But and this, I don't have this pressed in. I just got it barely in there, and I tapped it and pretty hard to get it that far. I'll probably have to run to Charlie's and borrow his ball joint press to get him in. I don't have a press here. I've got an arbor press, but it's probably not going to be enough to get it in there. And I don't want to hammer it in. I mean, I can flip it over and hammer it, but anyway. So we just got a little more welding to do on this A-frame here, and it's done, and I can get on the other side. And things are going to work out just fine. I appreciate everybody watching, and until next time, bye.